Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Pamela and I'm a member of the Australian Romance Readers Association, your host for today's event. On behalf of ARRA, I would like to thank and welcome you all, and we're absolutely thrilled to be able to put on this event. I want to thank Rehan Davis and all of the people at Penguin for helping us arrange it. I'd also like to thank Louise McNally from Dymocks for her generosity in allowing us to hold the event near this lovely place. Louise has also very kindly offered us a discount voucher, so they're in your goodie bags, so go afterwards you can go and buy something. It's great. I don't want to take too much of your time right now, as I know we're here to hear from Sylvia, but I want to quickly mention ARRA and the role of the romance community. ARRA was established 5 years ago to hold a romance readers convention. The first one was held here in Melbourne in 2009, and I know some of you did attend that. We have held 2 more conventions since then, but the next one is scheduled to be held in Canberra in 2015. We've had some really popular named romance authors as our guests: Sherilyn Kenyon, Mary Jane Davidson, Susan Grant, Stephanie Lawrence, Liz Maverick, Melinda Singh, Anna Campbell, Cindy Gerard, Anne Lacey, Rachel Vincent, and those were just our keynote speakers. We have had hundreds of Australian romance authors attend our events as well. ARRA also established an annual Romance Readers Award. In fact, earlier this year, Sylvia's Bed to You won the award for Favourite Erotic Romance for 2012. And we hold romance signing events most years as well, each one holding about 50 to 60 authors. All this is to say that ARRA is committed to bringing authors and readers together when we have the opportunity, and today is one such opportunity. You have some information about ARRA in your goodie bags, and I hope you consider joining. And if you're interested in learning more, please feel free to speak to me, Sarah, Kate, or Debbie during our morning tea with ones with the purple badges. Now, on to the important part of our morning. Sylvia Day really doesn't need an introduction, but I wanted to hit a few highlights from her bio. She started writing in 2003 and sold her first book in 2004. Since then, she has published more than 20 novels and another 20 novelists, with various publishers in both print and ebooks. Her books have been on numerous bestseller lists and have won many awards and have been translated into 39 languages. The first 2 books in the Crossfire series were listed in the top 10 best-selling books of 2012. The third book, Entwined With You, has only been out for 10 days, but within the first week had already cracked the top 10 bestseller at Amazon and went straight to #1 on both October and Nook. And I'm happy to announce that Sylvia Day is now Entwined With You is now the #1 book, best-selling book in Australia. Such as also becoming #1 in US, UK, and Spain. And as you all know by now, that there are 2 more books in the Crossfire series, and books have been optioned into a TV series as well. And if that doesn't keep her busy enough, Sylvia Day is also the president of the Romance Writers of America. Please join me in welcoming Sylvia Day.
I work for Penguin for Destiny Romance, which is the digital first imprint of Penguin, just in case you're wondering. Sylvia, I've got a fantastic first question for you.
Okay.
How does it feel to be #1 bestseller in Australia?
It's awesome. Of course, it's fabulous. You know, actually reflected in this #1 by like 420 copies to Jamie Oliver's cookbook. Yes. God bless Jamie and his cookbook, but this time around I said, please tell me Jamie doesn't have a book out at the same time as me. And he didn't, so it's lovely. You know, it really is, and thank you so much, because it's because you bought the book that it is what it is, so thank you.
And you've got a special Aussie connection as well, don't you, which perhaps makes it even nicer that you're #1.
Yeah, well, you know, when we landed and we taxied up to the gate, and they turned the seatbelt sign off. My mom leaned over because she was sitting in the row behind me, and she goes, "Welcome back to Australia 41 years later." Now I'm only 40 years old, so how does that work? Can you figure it out? Yes, I'm American, but I was made in Australia. Right here in Victoria. So.
And this is your first time here, isn't it, Sylvia?
Yes, yeah, it is.
There's been lots of questions and conversations going on while we've been waiting for you, and I think no doubting absolute passion verging on obsession with your books. And I was wondering, why do you think the world is so fascinated by Gideon and Ava?
Well, I think anytime we fall in love with a character, really deeply, it's because of their flaws. It's because of what's wrong with them, and that they want to be better people. So we can, one, sympathize with them, and two, we root for them to actually become this person that they want to be. And when they're doing it for love, that's, we can all appreciate hoping to be a better person for the person that you're in love with. And of course, Gideon has a deep struggle to get there, which makes us love him even more because it's so much harder for him than it is for the average person. And I think that's why. Plus, we relate to Ava on a girl-to-girl way, and for the most part, we don't mind that she's the one that gets him instead of us.
Well, I was wondering too, what inspired you to devise a series based around two characters with histories of abuse? What inspired you to?
Well, I was writing 7 Years to Sin, which is a historical of mine, and I wrote that in 2010. It released in 2011, and that dealt with, the heroine was a victim of child abuse, and the man that she's in love with, Alistair, also had an emotionally and mentally abusive home life. And in that particular story, that of course brought them together as a couple. That was their point of reference. They understood each other. That's what made them feel as if they were soulmates, that they had this in common. But as I was writing the book and doing research on it, I realized that actually that's not the way it would work. Abuse survivors are drawn to each other, and a lot of times they don't even know that about each other until after they're deep enough in their relationship that they share this information. But it's quite common. They do feel that affinity with someone before they find out why. But we all learn different coping mechanisms, and we all have different triggers, and typically their coping mechanism triggers the other person. So they become negative forces. They want to be together, but they can't because they have all of these, they keep triggering each other in the wrong way. That to me is a fascinating dynamic. And I couldn't explore it in 7 Years to Sin. I was 3/4 of the way done with the book. The deadline was looming, and there was no way for me to rip that apart and do it all over again. Plus, there was a historical, and I felt that really the story would be best told as a contemporary. So I knew that I wanted to rewrite the story in a way. And for people who read both books, they can kind of see that, because Alistair and Gideon are identical as far as appearance, and Jessica and Ava are also identical. They also have similar sorts of histories, and that was because when I first started Bear 2, I actually transplanted Jessica and Alistair into contemporary modern-day New York and started writing the story. It wasn't until I got a few chapters into it that Ava actually exerted her own personality. Gideon exerted his, and they became two totally separate characters that had absolutely nothing to do with 7 Years to Sin. But that's where it started, And all of my books, if you go and look at them, it's a common theme for me in different respects and to different intensities, that I write about characters who are survivors of something and are overcoming that. Typically, it's the heroine. I have a tendency to write tortured heroines versus tortured heroes. And then, Gideon just kind of took over all by himself and became him.
And we're very happy.
Oh, I am too. Every time I sit down at the computer and I get to play with him again, I love it.
Do you ever feel exposed writing such emotional stories? Do you ever feel exposed?
Well, no, because I consider myself more of a narrator than a creator. When people say, "Oh, this was clever," or "This was great," I tell people, don't give me any credit for that. Because really, the story kind of unfolds and the characters tell me what's happening, and I just try to type as fast as I can to keep up. I can't write a synopsis or any sort of advance idea of what the book's going to be, because whatever I come up with will not happen. Because once I start writing the book, they're going to do their own thing, and I have to let them do it. If I try to force my own vision onto the story, it doesn't work. I get writer's block. I get, a few chapters into it, and I get stuck. And that's when I realize that I call it author intrusion. That's where I'm just trying to, try to tell my story instead of their story. So I don't have that personal feeling of being exposed, because it's their story. I just am the one that's fortunate enough to write it.
Your lovemaking scenes are always so fresh and original. How do you keep them from being repetitive?
Well, and I tell people that I write one man, one woman using the equipment that God gave them, and you'll find that in all of my books. So when you're writing the pretty, mundane dynamics of a man and a woman having traditional sex, you could run into the possibility of it becoming repetitive if the sex scene wasn't an emotional turning point for the characters. And that's really what it is, because if you're just throwing the scene in there to have the scene in there, it has no place in the book, and you can tell that it doesn't belong in the book. You should really, if you pulled the sex scene out and then pieced the two halves around it together, it should feel off. It should feel disjointed, because who they were at the starting scene and who they are at the ending scene, with the sex scene in the middle, should be two totally different people. Something profound should have happened to make that work. And because of that, the scene will either, you'll have angry sex or happy sex or lustful sex, and that's what is interesting about the sex scene. That's not the mechanics of it. So you can have traditional, mechanical sort of missionary sex, and it won't be mechanical at all, because they're telling a story through the way their bodies interact with each other.
Something else going on.
Yes, of course,
At a
absolutely.
much deeper level.
Yes, because you imagine that if you walk into the wrong hotel room and somebody's having sex, what's the first thing you do? You're like, oops, sorry, and you back right back out again. You don't want to see that, However, if you're emotionally invested in these people, if their love story is part of your story, that's part of their journey, and you want to see that. You want to witness that. So it's two, totally separate things. You don't have the emotion in there. You'll get that sort of, flip the page. I don't want to see it.
You've got such a hectic publishing schedule. I was wondering, you must be enormously disciplined, and you must have a set routine with your writing, do you?
I wish. I wish that would be lovely. I'm a very organic writer. So if I'm not feeling it or I'm not connected to it, I cannot sit down and write. Now, I have a lot of writer friends that can sit down from like 9 to 5, and they're guaranteed to write 35 pages that day, and they can do that every day. Some of them have programs on their computer that track, how many words they wrote or how many pages, how many hours they worked. I can't do that. I have to be connected to the story and emotionally invested in it, and then the words will flow, and I can sit down and I can write 10,000 words in a day, and get it done. Or I can sit down and I can write, I could struggle with one page for 3 or 4 days. And usually that means that I'm not doing something right. I've lost track somewhere. I got separated along the way. So really, and I let it happen that way, because that's when you can feel the connection to the story. That's when you can tell that I was emotionally connected to the story as you're reading it. So I really have to I just have to let it happen, and find time here and there to let that process take over.
I know, I have some of my best ideas under the shower frequently.
Oh yeah, isn't that amazing? I think it pours out of the shower head.
Yeah.
The shower is one of the places where I usually, if I'm stuck on a scene, I'll try to take a shower. I usually will do it 75% of the time to get me where I need to go. Or I get in the car and drive around, and that works too.
Have you been surprised by the success of the series, and at what point did you kind of suddenly go, hey, this is going to be a global hit? Was there a point there where you suddenly realised how big this series was going to be?
I can tell you that when I first wrote and published Bear to You, I didn't think it would find an audience at all. I thought it was too dark. I thought that there's a lot of times where Gideon is unheroic, and it's hard to sympathize with him. And he's not your traditional hero at all. You know, he's really an anti-hero. And I didn't think it would work. You know, it worked for me, but I wasn't sure it worked for other readers. I thought that they would just find the story altogether too dark. But, you know, it was a story I had to tell and it was important to me. And I put it out there. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't shop it. You know, I self-published it originally because out of all, and I have so many publishers in the United States, 12 actually. I could have shopped it to any one of them, but my thought was they would come back and say, you need to change Gideon, you know? He can't have a typical sexual parasomnia. Who does that? You know, he can't have these issues. He can't be so closed off, you know, and I wasn't willing to change him. And of course you can't shop a work and then tell the editor that I'm not going to take your input or listen to, you know, anything you have to say in regards to it. So, you know, I self-published it and hoped that, you know, it would find somebody who would like it. But it became clear pretty quickly that it totally found its audience, and readers were recommending it to other readers, and it really exploded. And actually the editor who acquired it was already my editor for other works, and she heard the buzz about it before the book was even out because it was available for review for about a month prior to the sale of the book. And she heard the buzz about it and, you know, asked me about it before it went on sale. And foreign publishers were emailing, asking if they could acquire the foreign rights to it, and it all really took me by surprise because, I mean, it was pretty much instantaneous from the time the book was made available. And then it just kept kind of snowballing.
Did you have a kind of moment of total joy and excitement when you ran around the house like crazy, or opened a bottle of champagne, or did something?
You know, and I kind of have a cautious nature where that's concerned, and that's probably come from 10 years of publishing. You almost don't want to get too excited about it. If you get too high about it when you know, hit a low point, it's a long job. And publishing is cyclical like that, you know. There's authors that we know of who were huge 2 years ago that you kind of do a where are they now thing, and they're still publishing, they're still writing books, but they're not the topic anymore, somebody else is. And that's the way it works. And if you stay in the business long enough, you may hit another high, you know, at some point, but it doesn't last. And so the best thing you can do is put your head down and write the next book. So, you know, I may go out to dinner with my family and have a glass of wine or champagne, but then I come home and write the next book.
And finally, everyone, I was overhearing a conversation earlier going, oh my God, I can't wait 6 to 8 months for the next one. So everyone,
and which is typical. I mean, that's a typical schedule for a series. Is you know, a fast-moving series is once every 6 months. Some series are once a year. We were fortunate in that we got the first 3 Crossfire books out within a year span. So, you know, that was, and I had another full-length book that came out last year, which was 100 So Wild. I had 3 novellas. It was a big year for me. We're talking 4 books, 3 novellas, which is a typical schedule for me. I mean, it really is. But can I keep up with the demand of, can you put a book out every 2 months? No, I can't. You know, there's just no way, since it takes me 6 weeks to write it and 6 weeks to edit it, and, you know,
only 6 weeks? That is incredibly fast.
It's for Crossfire just because the story is there, and I'm so invested in them, and I want them to get to the happily ever after that I'm like driving really hard to get to that point for them. But I've had some books that take a year to write, you know, and some books that take 6 months to write. It just depends, you know, on where I'm at in the story and what's up. I mean, because sometimes I'll have something scheduled, and like I said, I'm very organic. So, you know, if a historical comes up on the schedule and I'm really feeling a paranormal, it may take me a couple months just to kind of force the brain to let go of the paranormal idea and move into the historical and write it. So it just depends. In the case of Crossfire, I'm invested in it, and I would rather just be writing that all the time, and finish.
Do you have time for real life? It seems that...
Well, and that's another thing. It's over the course of 10 years, of course, I've been working really hard. That's why I've released as many books as I have. And there's an understanding in my family that it will not always be, that much. So, I don't know when it'll slow down, but I'm sure it will, But, in the meantime, yeah, I think it's a great lesson for my children that if you want something or it's important to you, that you work hard for it, and you dedicate the time and you do it, and you'll get to the other side. And they've learned that. They've been, I heard my son, who's only 14 years old, on the phone with his friend a couple weeks ago. And he's like, well, man, if that's your dream, you just got to go for it. Just work it. And I'm like, you got it. Yes, got it.
Well, I'm sure you're all dying to meet Sylvia and have a cup of tea. So if you join me in thanking Sylvia very much, and so we hope to come back. Oh, sorry, I forgot. It's your turn now. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask Sylvia before you come tea? Yes.
I was just interested about your work as a Russian linguist with the US Army military intelligence. What exactly does that entail?
Well, and see, that's the thing, I can't really talk about it. When I joined the military, I didn't speak Russian. I took the aptitude test to find out what my strengths were, and I ranked really high in linguistics. So they said, we're going to send you to language school. So, and I spent 9 months learning to speak Russian, which, it's amazing. And they actually, civilians can pay to go there, but it's a ridiculous amount of money. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity. It's total immersion training from the time you start your class. Your barracks, all of the warning signs, fire extinguishers, exit signs, everything is in Russian. So that you really, if you don't start speaking Russian pretty quickly, you're lost, So, 9 months of that, and then, I move into the actual work part of my job. But it was a great opportunity. I loved it. I loved it so much that I talked my sister into joining, and so she joined the Air Force and she became an Arabic linguist. And after I married my husband, I found out that his father had gone to the same language school. He was a Marine, and he learned Vietnamese. And you can kind of tell, my sister's 12 years younger than me, so she went a few years after I did, from the languages that we learned, Vietnamese to Russian to Arabic, where the national focus was at the time, so.
Could you do a Russian chat show now? Could you?
It's been a long time. It's been about 15 years since the last time that I spoke Russian. Now, of course, if I went to Russia and I spent maybe a week or two there, it would all come back because it's there. It's up in there. But as far as sitting down now and having a conversation, it would be a struggle for me. At the time I left, I was dreaming in Russian. When I spoke Russian, I wasn't translating in my head. It just automatically came out in Russian. That wouldn't be the case now. I would have to sit there and think about what the Russian word was and, how to conjugate it and put it together. And so.
Any more questions? Yes.
Is the Marx series still on the back burner?
Sorry, didn't hear you.
So is it the Marx series still on the back burner?
Well, and there's a couple series that I have. Dream Guardians is one, and the Marx series are one where I left the publishers that were publishing those books and didn't shop the series to a different publisher. And that it's really, unless the series is something along the lines of Crossfire, moving a series mid-series to a new publisher is very problematic, especially if you have to read the initial installments of the series to enjoy the latest one. Because pretty much what you're asking to do is to ask a publisher to promote another publisher's books in order for them to catch up enough to be able to read the book that that publisher is offering you. So it makes it really difficult. Those series, Mark series and the Dream Guardian series, therefore, are series that I have to produce on my own time. And I'm heavily contracted. Right now I'm juggling 5 different publishers and multiple ongoing series, and I have to fit those books into that schedule. Once I get to the point where I can slow down, as I had said, which I don't know when that will be, then I can, continue to write the series that aren't finished yet, or that I would like to continue to write, which the Mark series for me was always envisioned as being an ongoing series, which I figured would stretch out into many books, a dozen books, 24 books. I mean, it's a huge world, there's a lot going on, and I wanted to be able to carry that out over the long term. So someday I will get back to it, I just don't know.
Any more questions?
I was going to say, is there any other genres that you haven't started writing that you might like to try?
Well, there are genres that I'm not yet published in, but I do have works in progress for. I actually have a contemporary steampunk young adult, which try to work that out. And so there's and there I have stories like that. I also have a contemporary supernatural thriller that I have on the back burner. So as far as are there genres that I want to be published in that I haven't published in? Yes, there are, but there isn't anything that I want to try writing that I haven't written, because I enjoy it.
Anything else to look forward to?
Any more questions? Yes?
The TV series.
Yes.
I can't get my head around. I know it's going to be a
Premium cable.
thank you. But I still can't get my head around how the sex scene's going to be done. I mean, it's like, are we going to see it? Are we just going to have to?
Do you want the
I don't know. I can't, and will it lose something by not? I can't get my head around how it's going to happen.
Have you seen 9.5 Weeks?
Yes.
Did you see Unfaithful?
No.
That's with Diane Lane and Olivier Martinez. Both of those are erotic movies wherein there was a lot of sex in there, and every time the sex was there, it forwarded the story with these characters. Unfaithful is a really good example of you can see this woman unraveling through the sexual interaction all the way through to the end of the movie. So it has been done, and those are really good examples of how it would be done. And in talking to the producers, that's exactly the sort of feel that they're going for. So they expect it to be present, for you to experience those scenes because they're so pivotal to the story. Like you really couldn't do the series and not have that very first limo scene with Gideon and Ava, because that was a huge turning point for him. If you cut that out, I mean, the story wouldn't work. So they're very aware of those things. So it will be along those lines, like 9.5 Weeks, where you're seeing a lot of sexual interaction happening between the characters. Yeah. But they're very focused on those being those emotional turning points being conveyed on screen. So, and that, and for them, and talking to them, they really feel as if A-list actors are the only ones who could really expose themselves and be that vulnerable on screen and do a really good job with it. So, I mean, they've set the bar really high for how they want to do it. So, it's in good hands, really. I mean, I talk to the producers often. We email back and forth. We talk on the phone. Right now, one of them is in Toronto filming Pompeii, but he'll be back in Los Angeles in July, and then we'll start sitting down in person and going through it. So they're very connected to the series. They also really pay attention on Twitter and Facebook. They're listening to the fans. They're watching the fan-made trailers. They're at the interaction that's going on. I mean, they really want fans to watch the show and feel as if it did justice to the story. So I expect them to do a really good job with it.
Casting of Gideon's going to be really important.
Yes, it is. And and I don't have any control over casting. They don't want to make any decisions that I'm unhappy with, but at the end of the day, casting is really up to the studio. But as I said, they're not looking at unknowns. They don't want to bring somebody that, you know, they really want people who are very seasoned to tackle something to where, I mean, they're spending a great deal of time on screen without their clothes on, one, and they have to convey that whole emotional resonance to it. It can't just be a bunch of, you know, grinding and moaning and that sort of thing. So, right.
Can I say, I really like that you haven't portrayed Ava as, you know, a model figure. She's petite, she's voluptuous, she's a little bit dumb.
Yeah, she fights with her weight. Yeah, you know. But I mean, that it's the rare woman who doesn't. You know, my sister is a fitness model. I mean, her body is perfect. She counts every calorie, watches everything she eats. She
I saw an interview you had that you said that when you started writing it, you sort of had both perspectives, but he's so closed off that you just couldn't do it.
Right.
But gradually he's
opened up. Yeah. Well, especially in Entwined With You was a huge turning point for me as the writer, because he opened up so much in Entwined With You. I was actually able to write a scene in his perspective that's up on my website. That was the first time I was able to do that. And as we progress,
so do you think the next two is going to be?
I mean, I think it will be possible for me to get into his perspective. Especially after the end of Entwined With You, I definitely felt that was a possibility when it was not a possibility before.
That's a question about Entwined. I've just got this feeling that Gideon didn't join. That helped him with Nathan. His stepmother's death. Am I barking up the wrong tree?
But see, you're that's a spoiler question. I don't do spoiler questions. But you know, there's a fan forum on sylviaday.net, and there's lots of speculation and discussion and all that sort of thing going on there, throwing out ideas, and so that's a really great place to kind of bounce ideas off of, you know, the other readers. I try not to spoil books, so.
Just trying to back you a little bit.
Who do you see playing Gideon and I know what fun to say, but who in your mind can you see?
Well, and see, that's the problem for me, because as the writer, Gideon doesn't look like anybody else to me. He's very, like, when I see him in my head, he's very distinctively himself.
You had seen somebody and you took him.
Well, and honestly, I really can't, you know, pick out people aside from when fans present choices. I can say which one I think would be best. In that case, I think Henry Cavill would do a really great job.
Yes.
He's the right age. He's got the right look, and he did a really brilliant job in The Tudors. You know, there's a lot of he was naked a lot in that series. Thank God. And you know, he conveyed a lot of emotion in that series. I loved the last season where he fell in love with the French girl during the war, and you know, he did that so well. I think he would do a great job with it, and I could see him doing the role. I mean, there's other people that are offered, like Matt Bomer. I absolutely could not see him doing it. I just could not. Ian Somerhalder is another. I absolutely could not see him doing it either. One, he's too old, and two, he's very thin. And Gideon is much more along the lines of Henry's build. You know, he works out a lot. He's got muscle on him, without being, you know, Arnold. So out of all of the choices I've seen, I think Henry would fit my idea of him the best. Ava for me is Scarlett Johansson. However, I have to say that I just saw her, actually while I was here in Australia, I was watching the news, and she had just done some award show, and she's lost like 25 pounds, and now she's no longer my Ava. She lost all those, you know, curves that she had, so I hope she doesn't stay that weight for long. Maybe it's for a role or something, I'm hoping. But
Maybe you should write her a letter. You know what, you shouldn't be so skinny.
yeah. You know, well, Jennifer Lawrence is also, you know, she's got the right look, she's got the right figure, she's also the right age. You know, Jennifer Lawrence would be really great in it. Amber Heard is suggested a lot, and I think facial-wise, you know, she would be great. She would need to put on a little bit of weight, but yeah, you know, I mean, I think if they hired an actress who wasn't curvy, we would have. You just can't put her together in your head with Ava. At least for me.
Sylvia, they're going to let you have some input.
I'm an executive consultant on the project, which means that all of the creative process as far as scripts and stuff will be run by me. And one, of course, they'll be consulting me as they write it, and then two, you know, as it comes through, you know, I'll be offering, you know, my input on what works, what doesn't work, that sort of thing. And they're really determined to have me very active in the series. That's important to them, which is great, you know, and that's sometimes they just completely cut the author out altogether. But in this case, they feel it's really important that I'm active in the creative part of it. So we shall see, you know, and as I said, they're very good at staying in contact. You know, they email me a lot. So it's a really good working relationship. And of course, Lionsgate is a fabulous studio. I really can't imagine another studio doing what they'll be able to do with it, because they do a lot of book to film, and they do a great job with it. You know, they stay really true to the story. So it's in good, experienced hands with them.
I like that one with like social media and stuff. Are you going to be doing like the snippets and snapshots and stuff again?
Of the next book? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I know the wait is hard. It's hard for me too, because I finished the book and then I'm waiting. You know, with the fourth book, that's not going to happen. I'm going to turn the book in, it's going to go into production, we're setting a date, and it'll be out within a matter of a few weeks. So, you know, I won't be as torturous the next time around as it was this time around, because there was no one for me to talk to about the book, you know. It was like, yeah, it was hard. So the snippets and snapshots kind of helped me keep my sanity too while we were going, you know, through the process of getting the book out. So I'll definitely do it again.
When will the title come out?
Well, you know, I'm still working on that. You know, I need to put together a list of suggestions and turn it in. But each one of the titles is really connected to the story. And so I need to feel that same way about the next title, that it fits in, you know, with what's happening in the story. So just as with the cover art, we try to make sure that when you read the book, the title, you know, makes sense, and the cover art makes sense, and you know, it's kind of one of those Easter eggs for readers of the series, that they can figure out what those two things are. They're not just randomly placed. So it shouldn't be much longer, really, because of course we want to get it out there. But we will not be putting pre-orders up until the book is in production. So we don't have any issues with the date being moved around as we did with the last book. That was just, honestly, it was just ridiculous. So this time around, once the book is rolling and they're producing it, then, you know, that's when the pre-orders will go up, the date will be there, and we're talking just a few months. You've seen something like that with Dan Brown's Inferno. It was announced in January, released in May. It's the same sort of setup that we'll have with the next book in the series.
Will it be released on audio again?
Audio? Yes, yeah. I'm very fortunate.
Why are you doing that?
My audio publisher is Brilliance Audio, and they have, I believe, 18 of my books, and we have a really good working relationship. So, you know, we'll continue to publish audiobooks with them, and they did a great job in getting the audio out on the same day this time. And they're committed to doing that for the next two books as well.
And can I say, Jill Redfield, I think she's brilliant.
Isn't she great?
Yes,
she's having a Crossfire baby.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, her husband actually is the producer of her recordings, and of course she does the recordings, and they were done having kids, and then she started narrating Crossfire, and so hopefully, I have my fingers crossed that we'll be able to get her back in the studio for the next 2 books. I think it would be really disjointed if we didn't keep the same narrator for the next 2 books. But that's congratulations to Jill. But she's got a Crossfire baby on the way.
I'd like you to join me in thanking Sylvia for coming today. I'm sure I speak for all of you that we're really happy to be able to meet you in person. So thank you so much.
For me as well.
This is just a small token from ARRA.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much to Sylvia. I'd also like to once again thank Penguin and Carol George from Destiny Romance for conducting the Q&A, and also thank you to Louise and Dymocks for allowing us to hold this event here. Just before we enjoy our morning tea, I've got a door prize to draw. Each of you should have a raffle ticket in your goodie bag if you want to.
I saw one hanging in a tree. He was so cute.
And Sylvia, if I can get you just to draw a raffle ticket. Just let you know, the door prize is an item from each of our 3